This episode is brought to you by Performance Protocol. You all know I've been preaching about recruiting and development of our police teams. Many agencies across the country are still struggling with their numbers, which impacts everyone's wellness and true ability to do their jobs. Enter Performance Protocol, a premier solution to address these exact challenges, helping not only to get your agency fully staffed, but stay fully staffed. To learn more, go to performance-protocol.com. All right, I'm really excited to share with you the new Blue Grit Police Testing and Hiring Guide that's live on the website. Really, this is the culmination of everything I've learned about police testing from the time I came in myself and had to figure out trial by fire what it was that agencies wanted. At the same time, how to showcase my best version of myself, right? It's not about being something that you're not, but it's about understanding each stage in the game so you can present the best way. In my guide, I go in everything about the hiring landscape right now, how to develop your mindset, what to expect, and how to show up. So it's about knowing yourself well, like identifying strengths, weaknesses, how to conceptualize this, how to articulate this, and then going into the test itself. So written, physical components, interviews, everything that we're looking for there, the background, what that entails, polygraph, psych eval, medical, what these things all are, what they're trying to yield or determine, and then how you can make sure that you are showing up to be effective so you're not wasting your time, stress, money, all the angst of waiting for this extremely long-term process to go through. So just show up the right way, your best way the first time. Again, you can find that at bluegritwellness.com. Go to the shop, so it's bluegritwellness.com/shop.
When we get somebody fresh out of the academies, we can teach them almost anything except how to be confident.
Once you put someone in a situation where it's like, I can talk to you guys or talk to family and friends, but when you're going to go have to tell someone that maybe you have to do something, that's the big step for them to be like, oh, I now have the authority to tell somebody what to do. And then if they don't, then I have to do something about that.
I think the confidence comes from understanding your legal authority, which sandbox you're in. So we talk about different situations like, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Can I talk to you versus, hey, let me talk to you. Like, this is literally a huge difference that can get in a lot of trouble in either direction, right? So if someone's not free to go and you say, hey, can I talk to you? And then they thought they're free to go. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Hey, ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode of Blue Grit Radio. This is a special FTO focused panel. So I have 3 officers that are all experienced as FTOs or prior FTOs. And so this is really trying to reach the prospects, the candidates that are coming in. You're about to get hired, you're getting hired, or even you're like just a newer officer. And these themes will definitely translate as far as things to watch out for, things to avoid, like common missteps, and then also flipping it into things that you should think about and trends and themes and characteristics you should gravitate towards and build within yourself to have a successful start of your career and beyond. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic around and ask my guests, my panelists, to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Ariana.
Hi, my name is Ariana. I've been in law enforcement for 8 years, and I currently work out in the Midwest in Illinois. I was an FTO for 3 years, then went into our crisis intervention unit, which is basically our mental health unit, where we co-respond with social workers. We have about 4 full-time social workers, and then follow up with any kind of mental health reports.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ariana. And we'll go over to Davin.
Yeah, I work for Kirkland Police Department. Been on patrol going on 7 years so far. I've been a PTO. We do the PTO program instead of the FTO.
Yeah.
Doing that for a little over a year. I've had maybe like 7, 8 students.
Nice.
But I'm just on patrol, just a road dog. So
yeah, not just patrol. Patrol is everything. So no, thank you, Davin. And shout out to the other KPD here in Western Washington. And just had your chief, Sherry Harris. Her episode aired a little while ago for the recording here. So it'll probably be a couple months back. But thank you, man. Reed, turning it over to you, man.
My name's Reed Klein. I'm an officer with the City of Wenatchee in Washington. We're smack dab in the center of Washington. I've been a cop for 6.5 years. got time as an instructor in firearms, FTO. I've been on our SWAT team for a few years, and I'm just happy to be on the show and share and give some advice to those looking to, I guess, further their career.
Absolutely. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you, man, and meeting through recruiting and training, like helping WSU, their training program, their cadet program, and teaching them like real world cop skills. And then talking about all the things that we need in this industry. So thank you all for being here. I was going to open it up and kind of, if you want to raise your hand and see, for purpose of not stumbling over each other. But if you want to just start off by like, what are some of the common things that you're seeing with people that are struggling in FTO?
I'll go first. I think one thing that we struggle with just as a whole is confidence. When we get somebody fresh out of the academy, is we can teach them almost anything except how to be confident. And where I think there's kind of a disconnect between getting that new person and teaching confidence is that getting misconstrued as arrogance. I think that falls on us as trainers and as an agency to allow that new officer with the fresh skills and the eagerness to work, to let them be confident and not take it. There could be some arrogance, but also confidence is huge in this job. You have to be confident, because if you're not confident going into your first couple calls, you're going to flounder. I think is something that I teach. When I get somebody in day one is have the confidence, man. You have the most current training out of anybody in this department. We're trusting you to make these decisions, and whether you're making the right decision or the wrong decision, it's all okay. We're going to teach you, we're going to train you, but be confident.
Yeah, it sounds like a healthy culture. Ariana, you're nodding your head there.
No, I was going to say, I think tying into that, like a lot of our recruits are young. So I think just even life experience ties into it too. It's crazy that once you put someone in a situation where it's like, I can talk to you guys or talk to family and friends, but when you're going to go have to tell someone that maybe you have to do something, that's the big step for them to be like, oh, I now have the authority to tell somebody what to do. And then if they don't, then I have to do something about that. But I think life experience has been kind of an adjustment, like with ours. But I think even when I got hired at 22, straight out of college, like minimal life experience, but I could talk to people and doing those things. So I think depending personality wise too, that, all kind of comes together.
Yeah. And you're like, you look youthful and vibrant now. And so I connect with that. I think everyone on this panel does, except Davin's got the sweet
been good
facial
to me
hair.
So far.
Yeah, that's good. But that was me, like, when I was a new hire, I looked like a baby, for sure.
I'm probably the oldest one here, so
Asian don't raisin, as I've been told.
Told. No, I'm turning 45 soon, so
no way.
Yeah, a lot of my trainees are like, I'm old enough to be their dads.
Yeah, and so so how do you put out that tutelage? How do you encourage your cop kids to step it up and believe in themselves?
Well, every time we go to a call, we have a discussion about legal authority. I think the confidence comes from understanding your legal authority, which sandbox you're in. So we talk about different situations like, hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? As long as they understand what their legal authority is, it builds on their confidence. And I tell them, hey, I'm here to make sure that you stay alive and that you don't violate anyone's rights, so you don't get in trouble. So I want you to go with your gut instinct, follow that, be confident, and I'll be there to have your back. But one thing that I see in a lot of new officers is lack of officer presence. I know that I tell my trainees, maybe two of the most important pillars going through PTO are officer safety and decision making. Decision making comes from understanding your legal authority, but oftentimes officer presence and officer safety go hand in hand. But a lot of these young guys who don't have the street smarts, like I grew outside of LA, like in the 90s where gangs were prevalent, and I got put in back of cop cars and stuff like that too. A lot of these young guys, they come in, they have no life experience. They don't know how to talk to like convicted felons or, guys on the streets. So that's a big thing about officer presence. How do I teach them that? That's been like more of the challenge. But like I said, regardless of what agency you're at, we all see the same things, right? Everything Reed and Ariana said, like we see the same things in Kirkland and anywhere else.
Yeah. I love that. Everything, if I'm going to bring it all back together, there's a lot of notes that you each put out that I like fully endorse and agree with, and like want to shout it from the rooftop sometimes, because regardless whether I was an FTO or a senior officer, like K9 kind of being like the informal leader, and then first line, and then now command, like I see I see these things, and I think that in the last few years we've had, I would say, an increased hesitation and an increased strain with confidence because of the times. And I don't blame anyone. I'm not disparaging anyone. Like the people that came in the last few years, like hats off to you. Thank you for being here. Like we'd be struggling without people that didn't want to come in the last few years. However, confidence is huge, and I've been working on this article with Police One, and so fingers are crossed that the editor likes my rendition here because she holds me to a high standard and she's fantastic. But I do talk specifically about this prong being confidence, and a couple notes that I had were confidence comes from competence, and that's where you guys were absolutely on the money as far as like training and legal authority. And for new folks, like if you're testing, you might not know what that means. And so in layman's terms, because I didn't know what it means when I was testing, but it's like, what are you here to do as cops? You have this authority, you have this uniform. You just showing up and saying something a certain way or standing a certain way or positioning yourself a certain way might make people think that they're not free to go. And so that like dramatically changes everything that's going on in that interaction and what you say, how you say it. Like, can I talk to you versus, hey, let me talk to you. Like this is literally a huge difference that can get in a lot of trouble in either direction, right? So if someone's not free to go and you say, hey, can I talk to you? And then they thought they're free to go. And vice versa. We know the opposite, right? Like not violating rights. And so I love that you focus in on just training. A lot of people say like fake it till you make it. And I like that to a
Mhm.
degree. And like Dovin's talking about life experience and Ariana's talking about those that kind of lack it. And I was definitely more in the lack it, being 22 on the street, grew up like a pretty regular kind of average life. I had some stress, I had some stuff at home, and I had a lot of encounters in college, I suppose, like seeing crime and all that. And I thought I was, pretty culturally experienced and, worldly in some ways even. But then I got thrown into where I work and I'm like, oh my gosh, like the stuff on Jerry Springer is real. It's real. And so a lot of culture shock, I suppose, there. But I would say like don't try to be something you're not. And that's where just being authentic and being real with people, but then falling back to your training. And I think as Reed said, right, like recognize you are the most freshly trained straight out of like classroom. So like the books. And now it's like leaning on your FTO and your peers to recognize how to adapt that.
One of the biggest skills that I think if you're trying to get into this job that you can hone wherever you are, and life experience is a tough one, right? Because you would think we need to look for guys that have military experience or some type of structure. I disagree with that. I don't think we're looking for any specific person, and you can get that life experience in any job that you have. And in college, I got married in college. I got married pretty young, and so I was working a couple different jobs to, just to support our lifestyle, my wife and me, and so I got a job at McDonald's. So the last job on my resume when I applied for Wenatchee PD was McDonald's, and having the mindset of I'm going to be in law enforcement. I'm going to have to put myself in some weird situations. I'm going to have to tell older dudes, go into their house and break up a fight and then tell that guy he's got to go to jail. How am I going to do that at 22 years old? And communication is huge, but you can work on those life skills. You can work on that all in a setting of, whatever it is, sales or industry or construction, whatever you're doing. McDonald's, you can talk to people like you would as an officer and put yourself in the mindset of, okay, if this person gets mad at me for the order that gets messed up or the pop's not cold enough, whatever it is, how am I going to defuse that? And start thinking about, as an officer, how am I going to be talking to people? And communication is such a tough one because it is one of the most powerful things I think we do is communicate. And ineffective communicators really struggle in this job. Sometimes you just have to meet people where they're at. Sometimes you have to buy yourself time while your partner's investigating. Sometimes you have to talk yourself out of a fight. I mean, it's such an important skill to have, and it got brought up. But that is something that, I think I had the mindset of that when I was going into this job and just kind of putting myself, building schemas before I even knew I was doing that. I just knew this was the route I wanted to go. But building those communication skills is imperative if you're going to be getting into this career.
Yeah, no, that's powerful, no doubt. I love how you talked about mindset, and it goes along with the course that I'm wrapping up on building Get Gritty, right? And it starts with mindset. Like everything starts with mindset, and then even recognizing that, like, and I'll explain my own flip being a younger officer, right? Like certainly a lot of work experience and things like that, but I wasn't putting it through the right mechanism, right? So as Davin explained, having experience in certain communities on the street, I didn't have that, but trying to act like I was tough and act like I knew what and like try to speak their language, like that was super ineffective for me, right? It probably even hurt me in some of these relations. Whereas showing up and for years, people just saying like, "Hey, rookie," because I'm, younger faced, right? Like, I'm just like, I'm just here to help. Here's what I am here for. Here's what I'm not here for. And just trying to like present plainly, even make fun of myself, right? Like just break down with humor a little bit. Like it's crazy how much more successful that was when I just try to meet people where I was at or where they were at from where and trying to explain where I was coming from.
Like that made me think too, like being fresh out of the academy, like everyone's kind of got that like robotic tone because you're like, all right, what's your name? DOB, address, phone number. That's all they're thinking about because they don't want to mess anything up. But like, that's one thing I would hone out. I'm like, bring some of your personality out. I'm like, how I may talk to somebody might be differently how you do, or like you're going to somehow find that you have something in common that you can bullshit with for a little bit. But that I think also comes with time too, because they're so worried and so focused on getting the right things, all the information. I don't want to get a can, don't want to do anything wrong. But once they break out of that kind of robotic, cadence, I guess, and let part of their personality show, then I think it gets a little easier.
Well, yeah, 100%. That's where I was going to go too, is just, in the academy, it's tough, because you've got to pass, you've got to hit all your marks, you've got to kind of check those boxes for lack of a better term. But, this career is yours. Once you get in the car and once you take the wheel and once you start making contacts, there's just very few boxes you have to check. We've got to establish who we are. We have to tell them that we're the police and that they're being recorded. But I find it super uncomfortable, especially when we got body cams. Being like, "Hello, I'm the police, and you're being recorded," and it's like thinking, how does the public expect us to talk to them? And I think there is kind of that expectation that, we've got to let them know they're being recorded. We got to let them know we are the police, and we've got to let them know kind of our grounds on why we're contacting them. Hey, you're being detained. I pulled you over for this, but also we can do that while being human too. Stopping a car and I'm on our traffic unit, so I get a lot of traffic stops, and see a lot of different approaches on it. And I tell everybody that I train, just be a person to this guy, this gal, whatever. When you go up to him, just, "Hey, good morning. Hey, I pulled you over for speeding. I pulled you over because your taillight's out. Just let you know my camera's on. The car's got a camera." Just, you don't have to be so, like you said, robotic. Police department, you're being detained. Your audio and video. That's such a weird way to start a conversation, and no job does it that way. So we can have our own personal touch. Absolutely. Put them at ease. Let them know that this is either a big deal why we're here, or it's not a big deal, and we just have some formalities to get through, and then this contact's over. I've had much more success at that than, but also guilty of being new and not really knowing, how do I communicate with this person? What do I tell them? How do I tell this person they're not free to go? And I think it's just our, confidence, our calmness, and our ability to communicate that makes those contacts go super smooth.
Yeah. Davin, what do you got on either communication or if you have another prong in mind?
No, I think Reed did a really good job highlighting how important communication is. I think for those individuals who are in the process of wanting to get hired on to law enforcement, and especially if they're younger, I found out that this younger generation are very much like social media interactive. So their communication skills are not like, sometimes young people might forget to say bye on the phone if they're talking to like an RP or something, reporting party. But I think they can go, when they go to the local store, wherever they are, strike conversations with people. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have 10 consecutive awkward conversations, that may indicate maybe you need to brush up on your communication skills. So it might be good practice, because we often contact people like strangers all the time. That's part of our job. So if you're trying to get hired onto a police department, you're getting ready for that big oral interview, go have conversations with random people, store clerks, cashiers, whatever it is. Just say hi to people, flush that out of your system so you're not nervous or anxious about it, and you get better at communicating with random people and striking casual conversation.
I love that example too, right? Like reps are one of the easiest ways to get better at anything, and the barrier of entry, the risk is extremely low for just talking to someone. Like you call it a social contact, or you just call it just talking to people, whatever, right? But I love that example because that's also an example I kind of inject in, which is that if you recognize that this feels a little weird because maybe you don't even think you're socially awkward, but you're now in uniform and everyone stares at you this certain way and they treat you this different way because you're doing this thing and you've only seen it on TV, and it's like, oh my gosh, like kind of like you guys brought up earlier, like now I am the police. That's kind of trippy. But yeah, just go out and talk to people. Talk to apartment managers. You don't know how much a lot of them will light up that you just stepped in and they didn't have to call about anything, because they're going to have stuff that they want to talk to you about. Like, and then start just engaging, like see what problems are going on. Or as you walk around, it's probably even less awkward than being a civilian walking around clothes, just striking up conversation with people, right? So think about that way. If someone makes eye contact, you smile at them, you say, hey, how are you doing? And you'll tell pretty quickly whether they want to chat or whether they want to just get out, right? So regardless, not hard to just initiate those. And if you're new and you have discretionary time, and it doesn't have to be a probable cause for a stop, like you just see somebody and you just decide to start talking, like I bet 9 out of 10 FTOs or PTOs would be like, nice initiative, right? Like you're getting out there. And as shout out to BC Sanders, retired cop and gang expert, says, that's community policing at its core, right? Just getting out of your car and talking to people.
Yeah, that brings up a point too. I had written down that I think is super important, and it was something that I got to do just because my FTO made me. Was every morning we're gonna get in the car and you're gonna drive me to Starbucks because I need coffee. And this was way before my like hyper caffeine addiction, but he definitely didn't help with that. But every morning we went to Starbucks on the north part of town, and it was always packed with people. And like you mentioned, Eric, you're the police. You're dressed up in all black with a gun and a vest on in a coffee parlor. You know, that's, to some people that aren't used to seeing that, that's, everybody looks at you. And being new, it was, whoa, you know, everybody's looking at me and this is really awkward. I might as well just start talking to, you know, greet somebody or say hi to somebody that you may recognize or whatever it is, strike up a conversation. And like Davin said, that's huge because it starts to kind of hone your skills. But also if it's super awkward, then you know you need to work on it, right? But if it just kind of comes natural, then you know it starts with those little conversations. Pretty soon you're able to do that, no problem. And then you know it's networking, it's community policing. Pretty soon they get used to seeing you in there. And for our community, they really appreciate it. And it was something that I thought was kind of silly, especially when I got started. I'm like, man, I want to go out and I want to find, you know, drug dealers and gun smugglers, and the importance of just simply talking to somebody in a coffee shop, I think was far more valuable than me out there trying to look for that, you know, the first stop of the day or whatever. It's a good way to start the day. It's a good way to start building, you know, networking, flying the flag, like we say, you know, having the car out there, but also have a game plan for your day and make some sort of routine, even as a new guy. You know, if your routine is, hey man, I really want to go to Starbucks and just get a coffee because I like drinking coffee or whatever. It doesn't have to be something grandiose, and it doesn't have to be stat based. You know, I want to stop a car right as I leave the parking lot. Make it something simple, and then have a routine. It just, I mean, there's so much importance in routine, but yeah, that's a great, I think a great way to start the day, and it's a great way to start building your communication skill.
Yeah, the irony is that you're just talking to somebody at the coffee shop, but you want to be able to talk to someone in an interview and interrogate the big drug dealer when you get that case. The irony is that doing the first will help with the latter, right? Because it's, people are just people, and if someone waives their rights, like now you're just talking to a person and you're building rapport and you're being friendly, you know, as much as you can, right?
If you're a new cop and you haven't watched like an actual in-person interview or field interview, if you've ever, I mean, I every time I watch our task force work, you know, because we pull security for them when they're doing their big scale operations and stuff, and hearing those detectives talk to people, talking about years and years of evidence collecting and case building all come crashing down, and then they get to talk to that suspect, you know, right in the field, you know, hey, do you want to play the game or not? You know, that type of conversation can't just be, you're under arrest, here's your rights, you know, and we'll talk later if you want. There's so much value in being able to communicate and knowing what type of communication to use. Sometimes it's just, you know, very basic, and here are your rights, and we are going to talk later, you know, or not. Your ability to communicate could get somebody to divulge information that puts the nail in that case. So, and it all starts, you know, I think it starts just with basic basic level communication, coffee shop communication.
Yeah, absolutely. Ariana, you got any thoughts on that? Or I know also, Davin brought up decision making, and if you have some trends that you noticed in your time in the field trainer role.
I think, again, depending on the recruit and everything, for me, I was like, I will pull, like kind of what Davin said, like, I will pull you back if we're about to violate someone's rights, huge officer safety issue, anything like that. I'm like, but I want you to make a decision. Like, it was more of the indecisiveness, but I wanted to see, hey, make a decision and, feel confident in that decision. And again, if I got to pull you back, I'll pull you back. And then we can debrief afterwards or explain, hey, this is why, like, we didn't do this or keep doing this, or, hey, this was great, and then still talk it through. So I think decision making, and then again, that just builds their confidence too. Because even if I had to reel them in, like, you're still getting that closure or like that discussion of like, hey, this is why. It's not just like I told you to do this, but I'm not going to give you an explanation. Because that's all people want to know is like, why am I doing this, or within what legal parameters, can I do this?
Yeah, I think that's such a common thing for any cop. I think anywhere would say the last thing they want to do is worry about pushing someone to engage. Right? It's always easier to walk you back and be like, to make like the canine allegory, right? Like holding the lead, like pulling back, like, hey, I will keep you out of trouble. That's literally my job. So you just go. And if we need to talk about how you just need to go less in general, like maybe like you're that high drive person and you don't have your legal authority dialed in, cool, we'll have that conversation. But ultimately, like, my job is to keep you safe. My job is not to motivate you, because if you're new and you're not showing motivation, and maybe it is because you lack confidence, then we need to figure that out, right? Like, talk to some peers, talk to some, maybe a mentor or something like that. And hopefully your FTO, you have a constructive relationship. But at the same time, like, that is, I suppose, like a huge warning sign if someone's just not engaging. You have this job now. I have to try to motivate you now when you're on probation. Like, what are you going to be like when you finish training? If you finish training, huge issue from the organizational standpoint.
Yeah, and I think too, like, people are finding that fine line too. Is it just a lack of confidence, or is it actual fear? Because to me, those are two, different things. It's like, if I want to be here and I, want to do this job, but I'm just lacking because I don't know, versus, that oh shit moment where it's like, oh, okay, I've never been in this situation. I don't know what to do. I don't know if this is for me, which there have been recruits that have also done that, where once they get in a situation, they're like, this isn't what I thought it was. And I don't think this is for me. I'm like, I could never give someone any hate for that either. Like,
Nope.
if you realize it's not for you, perfectly fine.
Yep. Do it now before someone gets hurt. For sure.
I think that's a good point. I think some of that fear may come from, and we've seen this from grading, from the grading scale that we use for FTO and PTO. For our agency, we've had a few different heads for our FTO program, and our current one really stresses, right, we're trainers before we're graders. In fact, we're not graders. We're here to train. And I think sometimes that gets lost, where we're so focused on, okay, how do I grade this call? And we, every call we go on, we get graded. Every traffic stop we get graded on the San Jose model scale. I remember being new at FTO, I was so focused on making sure that my grading was correct that I did lose that, I guess, training mindset, where I'm here to train, not necessarily just to grade. And I remember having a talk with one of my training officers, and I said, look, I would rather you go out, make as many mistakes as possible, like, give me as much stuff to work with, because if you don't do it, like, we don't know how you're gonna perform, and I could care less if you get all ones on the scale, zeros even, if you're just completely not able to do it. That's why I'm here. I'm here to train you. So, and if you don't put yourself out in these situations, if you don't go out, stop a bunch of cars, go make a bunch of field contacts, then I don't know how to train you. And you could just kind of get by doing the bare minimum, which for me, like, I keep stressing, don't worry about the score. That's as much for you as it is for us, because if we see the low scores, that tells me, hey, I need to spend my time training you in this field. If you're struggling with communication on calls, then we need to go make some contacts just to talk. So it's a super powerful tool, that I guess, the grading scale, but also it's have the mindset of, we're here to train, and if we don't know where we need to train, we're doing a disservice to you.
Yeah, I love that. And I suspected that there'd be a lot of takeaways for trainers and for supervisors in this episode. And that's one thing that I've said many times. I'll keep saying, like, field training officer, not field evaluating officer, right? There's a huge difference. Like, what is your main goal? And yeah, you got to do both. You got to grade, you got to take notes, but you got to take just as many notes on like what is going not ideally and how to fix it. And then also like what is going well, because I mean, very few of us have ever done something with this much investment, like literally a huge hiring process, academy, all this time, and then getting into it and basically being told you suck at something so bad. Like, there's been no class, probably no course or training program or whatever grade school for sport where you probably did that dramatically. So it's just recognizing like the culture and how everyone has a seat at that, right? For the new person, I will inject this before I pass the mic, but I think there are those kind of quote unquote traditional old school department cultures. One thing that could really help is just networking, talking to other new people that are done with FTO or talking to other peers in FTO, because I was a little bit on an island when I was on FTO and had a lot of really positive uh, examples and mentors, but everyone that was out in field training except for me was on the opposite days. So wasn't developing relationships with them. I didn't know it was normal to just get all these low marks, kind of on the daily, like as was expected at the time at the first stage of training. Once I, had a flip where I was basically super struggling FTO, and a lot of that was in my own mind and just not knowing whether that was regular. Like, I almost quit, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But once I was able to flip out of that and think more positively and trust myself and trust my training and trust my trainers and submit my ego a little bit, like bring that down, I made a huge turnaround. And then the rest of FTO was totally fine. But when I look back, when I heard that other people got just as, we would joke about it, right? Like, how many twos did you get last week? Like, when I started learning that was more normal, then I was able to give myself so much more grace. And right. So if you find yourself in that position, ask around. And a lot of FTOs will even the stern ones will say, hey, it is normal for you to get all these low marks right now. That's kind of the point. Now, what we don't want is the same continual mistakes in the same way where I'm not seeing traction, I'm not seeing any build. That's where we're going to have an issue. But if you are taking things to heart and I'm seeing improvement, then we'll get there. But that is a nudge to trainers to hopefully have that transparency as well.
You guys are all on the FTO rather than the PTO, is that correct?
I was going to ask, I'm like, what's PTO? Because we're all FTO.
Okay.
Is there a certain difference?
Yeah, PTO is patrol training officer, so we don't have the scores and the grades at the end of each day. Okay. So we have different phases, like you have phase A and B, and then midterm, and then C and D, and then final. So what we do is we for like the first phases, we journal each call. So every call that we go to, I have to write a paragraph about how the officers in training did. And that officer has to journal about each call as well. So I've noticed that there isn't as much pressure because I didn't go through the FTO process. But when I hear like my buddies talk about it, they're like, oh, I got this score, this grade. And it just seems like it does give you a good evaluation, excuse me, on how you did that day, as opposed to PTO where they may be wondering, oh, they often ask me, how'd I do today? I think you did fine, man. But sometimes they want a grade or some sort of concrete like evaluation at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it seems like FTO might be a little stressful to most because the fear of failure or a lot of new officers really get down on themselves when they make mistakes. And you have to be there to kind of like pick them up and get them to refocus, not because you're trying to coddle them, but you need them to be in a good headspace to go to the next call so that they're safe and they do the job well. So if you give someone a bad grade, have you guys noticed the next day that they're in like a negative headspace? Because I don't see that much because we don't have the grades.
I mean, or just even how it goes to the next call, because sometimes that just snowballs the rest of the day.
Yeah, and for people that are listening in, PTO is it's a pretty robust program out here, at least in Washington. Like, there's a lot of agencies that have it. It's not just for people that are in other states, maybe you're like, oh, of course, Western Washington has this no grades and they get a gold star. It's not that. Like, it's been around a long time. But I think it might have more relevancy because let's challenge the notion of like scoring daily. Shoot, like I learned how to paint houses in college and then I started running a franchise with that company. But if I had been put on some sort of like FTO like standard, my first few days I probably would have quit because I'm like, I guess I have no business touching a roller and like I'm gonna ruin someone's house and have to pay out all this. No, it's like things are easily painting generally pretty fixable as long as you follow some basic tenets. Like you can paint over it, you can take the paint off, right? Like ultimately I was painting at a rate like most everyone that ever learns this thing, painting super slow where it won't be profitable. But you got to start somewhere. One of my bosses always talks about mechanic work, and he comes from that background, used to have a business, but he's like, you don't want a 1 year mechanic anywhere near your car without supervision, like extreme supervision. And yet we have one of the most challenging jobs. I think across the board, like whether you like cops or you don't, you'll say that, yeah, this is a very challenging job to do well and do right. And so we got to recognize that as an industry and then share that with our new people so they don't just beat themselves up all day, every day.
Well, I guess what I was saying is for us, gone are the days of trying to wash people out. And I know that was when I was in the academy, they talked about a lot of, you'll get washed out if you do this, you get washed. And for us being a smaller agency, we don't have that luxury. So you're an investment to the city when you're in the academy, when you're brand new, you have value to our agency, and we're going to do everything we can to throw those resources at you to make you successful. And so we want to see those low scores because we want to know what area is there a theme, is there a certain place that you're struggling more than the other, and that as trainers, that gives us good groundwork to start focusing training if we need to.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think that is a shift, right? Like we struggled so hard to pick up quality people in the last few years, and we see across the nation people removing standards, or agencies removing standards or lowering them. Like that's not the answer. We gotta stick with it. And I'm not just trying to point fingers, but we got to build to a more sustainable place and actually like train and adopt people into hopefully a really positive culture, or working towards positive culture too, right? Like that should be the end game for all of us. I want to flip the conversation, and I know we covered a lot of things that are constant or frequent traits that we see in people that hit a lot of obstacles in FTO. And so there's a natural flip into, okay, how do you not do those things? Like, okay, be confident and all that. But what have we not covered that y'all would like to share with the listeners that they should focus on, not just for FTO, but continue in the process as a new officer that's getting their footing?
I think that there's so much you can go about, like creating structure and routine in your personal life, creating healthy habits, not always going to some coping mechanism like drinking too much, but having healthy habits. But for me, like as a patrol guy and with my trainees, I tell them, hey, you need to consistently work on your hard skills, meaning like you need to be in the range. Like I try to shoot every week. I dry fire before shift. I exercise, but work on your hard skills so that as an officer, I know this sounds cheesy, you got to stay hard, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean? Like work on those hard skills. Yeah. Don't let that go to the wayside, whether it be jujitsu, MMA, like work on those skills so you can be physically fit and mentally sharp, but also create healthy habits for yourself, whether it be breathing exercises, nutrition, cold plunges, anything. You have to have that structure so that you stay mentally sharp and mentally healthy, because we see a lot of stuff. I can recall the hardest calls, and a lot of times they involve like little kids or babies, and it compounds, like we never release it. It's like we throw all these like heavy rocks in this backpack, and at the end of our career, we're still carrying this heavy burden. There has to be a healthy outlet. So that's my biggest advice for guys young in this career, or guys or gals young in this career.
Dude, I love that. And talking about like the course, get gritty, like that, it starts with mindset, and the next thing is routines, right? And healthy habits. How do you build that all in? So I love that we're talking about performance, but ultimately, like that is the governor. I mean, that's my strong belief where all this started. Blue Grit was like, you can do a lot to take care of yourself. You can control a lot in your own life and outlook and perspectives and environments. What you can't control, legislation, law changes, policy, who's your boss. Okay, like that stuff comes and goes, but you can always control a lot, and it starts with you. So no, thank you so much for highlighting that. And shout out, if you want information on that when it's live, send me an email, bluegritwellness@gmail.com, or just send me a DM. But yeah, what else you guys got?
I think even piggybacking off of that, like taking care of your like mental and physical, but just being able to feel comfortable enough to talk and to say something. Like we see some wild stuff that not a lot of people can relate to. But having that confidence to either go to a coworker, your friend, whoever, and it's always easier for someone who understands that and who, has maybe been on the same call as you, or, just can understand that we've seen some crazy stuff, but not being afraid to talk about those hard things, because a lot of people see it still as being weak. But that's when you get into those, bad, drinking, gambling, all these other negatives to try to cope with it. And then it just, again, kind of snowballs into a bunch of negativities. Don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's actually on the street with learning the job or, for your own well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're wearing the sweatshirt. You good? Right. So that's that peer check, right? The peer support. It's not just about like you have it next to your name or you have the training, but everybody, if you're in this job, like just as necessary as you being able to handle your weapon, know your training, your legal authority, like you should care about other people that you work with and in the community. So just simply saying like, hey, you all right? Hey, that was a crappy call. And then someone's saying, yeah, right. That's that peer support. Like it's already started. Or ask you like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at? Like 10 being like amazing. You're in Disneyland. All right. No, thank you. And we'll bring up what you do, Ariana, at the end when you sign off. But yeah, Reed, what do you have?
Yeah, like self-reflection and like your mental health is huge. And I think, we did an excellent job covering that. As far as, traits for new officers, and I think, one thing we love seeing is the ability to just problem solve. And I know that's super, super vague, super broad, but also specifically to, FTO is to receive training and then apply training. If we have to take 10 minutes to talk about how do I position my car on a traffic stop, right? We'll talk, we talk through it, we train through it. And then, I expect like if I show you 3 different ways to do it and there are different applications that you apply that, that's, I think, really like the nuts and bolts of FTO and how to be a good cop is listen to what these guys and gals are training you and then just apply it. Don't feel like you have to reinvent the wheel. And I tell all of my students, watch other cops, watch them do their job. Go back this guy and see how he handles that call. Just watch him. And if there's something hey, why did he do this? Why did they not arrest him? Why did they, whatever it is, we'll talk about it. One of my biggest pet peeves on FTO and in the whole FTO process is if I ask somebody, why did you do that? And they say, well, that's how they trained us how to do it in the academy, or that's how so-and-so officer showed me how to do it. That did happen, right? They did show you how to do it, but they trained you. They showed you how to do something based on their experience, their time in on this job. If you have a 20-year cop say, hey, do this, and you go, yes, sir, I'll do that. Right. There's no context there. So as a FTO, it's super tough, but ask that question, ask why, why do we do something this way? So then when you're doing those things, you have some context to it. You're not just doing what somebody told you to do.
Yeah, no, that's a huge thing. And just on that last piece, it makes me think about being an FTO or listening to student officers kind of say, hey, I got this situation, right? And you know where this is going, like, my FTO didn't like this, but I was thinking this, this, and this. And there's a lot of confirmation bias and framing, and not saying that people intentionally frame it a way that they're like the right answer, but it's always tough to comment on that. I've always abstained because I'm like, hey, listen, like you're explaining the call as best you can, but I wasn't there and I don't know what your FTO is going to say. And so one, I think organizationally I'll step out of that, but also like brass tacks is that if you use the academy instructor, like who's to say that the academy instructor would even say, yeah, in this call I would say the same thing. You're like, no, like because you see the window there and you see like there's no cover on approach, so you're applying the wrong thing. And so I love how you recognize like there's so much of needing to understand the why so that you can apply it the right ways with the right context. And I think that it just goes so much to recognizing like that hunger to learn and that growth mindset of like every negative critique is an opportunity to actually learn if you actually try to actually learn.
It drives me nuts when somebody says I did something because that's how they told me to do it. Like, Okay,
Yeah,
did you put
it's
any thought into that though? Like, did you think that was good or bad? That's just how they showed me. It's like, well, let's think through this. Let's try different things. Let's try a different approach and schemas. Hey, if you were going to go to this call, what would you do? Or it I guess for me it just is a bad answer when it's just that's just what I was told to do.
Well, that's one of the worst like leadership things to hear, right? Like, why are we doing this? It's how we've always done it. So
Oh yeah.
essentially, we recognize that as student officers, we're building new officers, new leaders. And yeah, absolutely. Everyone that's a cop, everyone that's a first responder is a leader in the community. So let's nurture and foster that. Yeah, Ariana, is there anything that you would like to throw out at the listeners as far as like kind of summarizing or the things that you really would love for new recruits to really embrace?
I mean, just coming in open-minded, because like you said, like there's going to, depending on personalities, there are going to be some arrogance, some entitlement, or, oh, I graduated the academy and now I'm, boots on the ground in FTO and, here's my time to shine. I think we've all had those moments where we've been very humbled, where we think that, oh yeah, I'm the new thing and whatever, and then we quickly get humbled. But just come in with an open mind, like take in what all your FTOs are teaching you, because I can tell you I took something different from every FTO, and even like how Reed touched on, like, or I've had that where they've said, well, my last FTO showed me this. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But like, so here's a different way to do that, or a different way to approach that. And whichever way you decide to do it, not that it's right or wrong, but here's another option. So just being open-minded to what you're being taught, and to not try to take it too close to the heart, because they're just trying to make you better. It's nothing personal. It just wants to make sure that you're safe and you'll be able to, protect everyone else around you too.
Yeah, that's good. Check your ego and fail fast. Like keep moving on and take it. Tools for the toolbox, right? All right, Davin, how about you?
I told my trainees there are 3 Ps that I emphasize with them all the time. Be proficient in your hard skills. Always be professional in your words, actions, demeanor, whether you're at the station, whether you're outside. I'm not saying like be robots, because we have fun at the station, but just you never know who's walking around. Be professional. You might have guests and stuff, and also be positive. There's a lot of negativity in this career because of what we see, and as cops, you understand, we kind of get into like us versus them sometimes as far as like our mentality, and it's a continual fight. But just 3 Ps that I teach them. Try to be positive for the most part. We're gonna have bad days, we're gonna have good days, but clear your head, go on to the next call.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's not toxic positivity like that you might hear about where everything's rainbows. No, it's not. Like real talk. Let's be practically positive, like as much as is practical, and always work towards a constructive place. And everyone needs to get better at that, right? Especially in this culture, we're cynics, we're sarcastic, and there's a healthy version of that, and there's a really unhealthy, corrosive version of that, especially if it just goes on and on. So, I love it. It's a lot of what I try to be about as well. So, all right, well, I thank you so much for your time. I want to go around the room and let you all plug your stuff, right? Like, let's start with Ariana. You got, as I mentioned, the sweatshirt. You good? You have your clothing.
Yeah.
So talk about that and where people can find that.
Yeah. So I started Limitless Momentum just almost 3 years ago. It'll be 3 years in March. For me, I didn't really deal with mental health growing up. Like, sure, I had stressors and stuff happen, but being in this career, definitely took a toll at a certain time. And just seeing like the influx of mental health calls, at least that we see, I'm sure you guys see it too. So Limitless Momentum is just a clothing brand. Again, kind of how you touched on. It's not like the rainbow and sunshine kind of designs. Like, it's more subtle. It's more, I'm sorry, not more subtle, but more kind of like in your face, but just being like trying to hold yourself accountable to, get your stuff right, make sure your other people are good, checking in on yourself and other people. So that's like my little side project. But on any socials, it's limitlessmomentum.us. Same for the website.
Awesome. Thank you, Ariana. And Davin with the Blue Hero Project sweatshirt.
Oh yeah. I thought Diane, my wife, would be happy if I wore this.
Smart man.
She was on your podcast not too long ago.
Prior guest, absolutely.
Yeah, and then so we're a nonprofit here in the state of Washington. We also serve Oregon. We've been out to Wenatchee a few times as well. Mm-hmm. But primarily, we drop off drinks and snacks to police departments. We also service officers who are injured in the line of duty, and we also provide services to officers who have lost families in the line of duty. And for us, it's about promoting like overall like morale boost within the police department, because the only time we really get together is when an officer dies. So we're trying to be that common thread to bless and encourage officers, remind them that we got each other's backs, and the majority of our donors are police officers and their families.
Yeah.
So it's a testament to how much we're trying to support each other. We're just doing that. We're just messengers of that positivity and that generosity. So we're blueheroproject.org. We're on social media as well.
Yeah, love Blue
Dope.
Hero Project. Yeah, Diane has been on the show, and y'all have made multiple rounds in our department and so many other departments where I will say the typical cop. I think when I learned about Blue Hero Project, I didn't know y'all and what your mission was. Like, they're too nice. There's something wrong here. Like, what's the angle, right? Because it's like typical cops. Like, oh, there's free stuff. What's wrong with it? Is it expired? Like when we get I'll say a major airline, like a bunch of snacks dropped off. Like everyone's quickly looking at the date, and of course, like. People are like, hey, it's the Best Buy date. Like, come on. Like, it's not like, it's not going to make us sick. But anyway, I digress. No, thank you. And Reed, shout out to Wenatchee. I got family out there, so like, we need good cops in Wenatchee. So,
oh yeah, we got the best cops in Wenatchee. No, I just appreciate you having us on here and letting us kind of speak about what we're doing here. And man, I wish I had a cool foundation that I could talk up, but I just got to talk up our department because I'm a recruiter. So. But no, again, thank you. And it's been a pleasure to talk with Davin and Ariana about their experiences too. But I guess our plug is we're centrally located in Washington. We are hiring right now. We're looking for laterals and new hires, and things have been really good. Our recruiting efforts have definitely paid off. So thanks to you and our communication. And it's Washington. Believe it or not, I think is in a really good spot for law enforcement, especially for new hires. And just, it's like gone are the days of just trying to get people in and it's either sink or swim. I could probably speak to most agencies in the state where we will train you like as much as we can to ultimately, if you're not going to make it, it's something we can't overcome, or you're just not the right fit here. So
yeah,
no, man, thank you again. Thank you guys, Davin and Ariana for sharing and this was great. And thank you, Davin, because I know you guys have hooked us up for a few years in a row. And it's always fun when we see that table full in our squad room of just drinks and snacks. It is a morale boost. And we're super fortunate to work in a state where that's at the forefront.
Yeah, I will say that, being that we've had over like 160 visits throughout Washington and Oregon, that Kent PD, Wenatchee, amazing agencies. The officers are great. Both your respective agencies, the leadership's great. So kudos to you guys for really having a really strong, positive culture out there.
Well, thank you all. Thank you. And the links will be in the show notes so you can learn more about Wenatchee PD and Limitless Momentum and Blue Hero Project. And thank you all for your insights. I know this is going to provide so much value, not just to prospects and new officers, but those that are in the job. And I venture to guess that a lot of us will hear these themes and kind of reinvigorate and remind us of our purpose, right? Because we all go into our little rut of just kind of going through the motions. You're like, hey, like, no, the same thing that we want of our new officers, I should challenge myself and my buddy, because we're kind of in a rut and we're kind of just going through the motions. So let's step it up. And I appreciate the connection and continual connection with each of you. And I'm excited. And I'm really hoping that in the next few years, I see each one of you with sergeant stripes, because you have all the right stuff. And I truly mean it. Like really just giving a dang and all the right things and caring about people in the department, outside the department, the reason why we do it all. So thank you.
I got a lot of years left, man. I gotta burn my fuse out a little bit.
Yeah.
The traffic thing's been good. No, it's good.
All right. Yeah. Davin with the beard. He'll be up first.
Hey, I got like white hairs going in, man.
That's what I'm saying. You're ready. You're seasoned.
No, but yeah. I got 13 years left because I started late. So
I got 20. I got 26. I'm in no hurry.
Okay.
26 years left.
At least, yeah. Yep.
Say I got 25 if they don't turn tier 2 over back to tier 1. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, we don't even know what that means, but we won't get into that. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Eric.
Of course. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.